Good evening. Welcome to tonight's event, which is on the sharing economy. Tonight's a collaboration between the Leicester Center for Entrepreneurship and the Center for Responsible Business. And I'm Christina Meinberg, Associate Director for the Center for Responsible Business. We are a convener and an action tank. We bring together students, faculty, and innovative companies to redefine business for a sustainable future. Tonight's event theme is a terrific excuse for us to partner with the Leicester Center, which has the Berkeley Entrepreneurship Forum. It has been bringing together the local community with students and entrepreneurs for 2 decades now. And it almost goes without saying that tonight's event is a perfect finale to this semester's Peterson series, which has had the theme of Question the Status Quo and discussion around business models that question business as usual. By the way, a few public service announcements before I dive into the topic. For any of you tweeters out there, I was meant to tell you that the hashtags for this evening are Sharing Econ and Berkeley Haas. So if you don't know where you are, we're at Berkeley Haas. Also, you should have received feedback forms on the way in. I think I see some floating around, so please keep those in mind, and we'll be collecting those afterward. On the topic of question the status quo, Berkeley Haas Dean Rich Lyons talks about this defining principle for us, which enables us to frame questions such as, is there a better way to do this? Or can XYZ business practice be done differently? Tonight we partake in a conversation with some local entrepreneurs who are leading the sharing economy, and these leaders, alongside many others who are building the sharing economy style business models, are truly disrupting business as usual and fighting the good fight so that things can be done differently on many fronts. Just a couple examples that you're likely familiar with. Room and ride-sharing companies such as Airbnb and Lyft are debunking the myth that services such as accommodation and transportation are always going to be dominated by large, centralized, and established organizations. Yurtle, who will be here speaking in a moment, is challenging the brick-and-mortar retail consumption model. Its mission is to reduce the amount of durable consumer goods that we need to buy by 25%, and it's not a nonprofit. Entrepreneurs in the sharing economy are faced with interesting questions on a daily basis, such as how do we manage the life of a product under multiple owners? Or how do we make money while building peer-to-peer communities with integrity? This is clearly a new field with a lot left to be figured out, and for this reason I'm pleased to introduce one of the most prominent thought leaders in this space who knows these issues deeply and from her own personal perspective, and that is Lisa Gansky. Lisa is an entrepreneur, investor, speaker, and author of the best-selling book, The Mesh, Why the Future of Business is Sharing. Lisa is also shaking things up as chief investigator of Mesh Labs, which is a directory of nearly 8,500 sharing companies globally. In order to become a member of the directory, according to the website, it says a mesh company uses modern technology and social networks to provide people with goods and services without the burden and expense of owning them outright. I love that. Lisa also co-founded and led OPhoto, a global photo sharing service which was acquired by Kodak, and co-founded and led GNN, the first commercial website which was acquired by AOL in 1995. She's been an investor and board member of over 30 internet and mobile services companies. She knows the space well, and we're really glad to have her. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Christina. I'm delighted to be here, even though it's raining. So let me just jump in. I'm giving you the format before I start blah-blahing, which is just to say that I'm really delighted that the Yurtle characters could be here, Andy and Adam. I want to give you a little background about the general space for a few minutes, and then we'll talk amongst ourselves, but let you guys watch. So, in Spanish, I don't know, I was thinking about how to start the conversation with you, and friends of mine in Chile taught me this expression a long time ago, because when they first started to come to the States, they have an expression which they say, estamos juntos pero no están revuelto, which means we're together but not scrambled. And I think that that's a good place to start this conversation. Weirdly, though, when I went to take this photo, I opened the egg, and it was one of those eggs that have 2 yolks in them. So I thought this was appropriate for population density, so I decided to keep it. So last century, I refer to last century as the century of the generals. General Motors, General Dynamics, General Mills, General Electric. It was top down, don't worry, we have it handled, pretty much do what we'll tell you. This century, the 21st century, is organized around very different themes, different tools, has a different pace, different expectations. Much of this, at least the first half of this century, is organized around sharing. Now, sharing isn't really new to us. We share public parks, public spaces, public art. We share transportation, pubs, places to talk, cafes. Infrastructure, please don't tell my insurance company I took this picture. It's a theme, basically, as I sum it up, that we're moving from a kind of orientation and a way of looking at the world where we were very organized around ownership. We're moving to one in which access to goods, services, and talent triumphs over the ownership of them. One of the things that's driving this, and actually this slide is about a week old, so it's about 7.12. It's moving quickly. One of the things that's driving this is population. So the world population is moving towards 9.6 billion people on the planet. The predictions from the UN and a number of other agencies that keep track of these sorts of things is not only is population increasing, but 75 to 80% of the world's population will be living in cities. So many more people in more or less the same physical space kind of invites less stuff. Climate change is also one of the drivers of this. This is a very talented barista from Copenhagen who made this for me. But climate change actually is creating another kind of tension and incentive and way of thinking. Also, this is a historic moment on the planet. We're actually more connected to more people than ever before. We're also potentially more connected to more things. So technology, especially, how many people here have like a smartphone in their close vicinity that I would have to pry from your cold, dead hands? Right, so smartphone is in many ways kind of the device that allows you to kind of, or at least me, it's the remote control for moving around the world. You get off of a plane and can find an open table to have a meal or a conference room or a place to stay and all sorts of things. And increasingly, the mobile device is getting smaller in size and price, getting more interesting things and allowing us to tap into access. And then, of course, another vector, the recession, depression, economic downturn, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of invited us as individuals and businesses to rethink and realign the true cost with the true value of things. And since 2008, we've seen many people, individuals, go through their garages and closets, potentially sell houses, rethink their life in terms of what they actually want and need and what really has value. And likewise, companies and cities as well, looking at factories, intellectual property, teams, and kind of making it make sense against what really has practical value. One of the main themes for me within the mesh is this, that unused value is waste, that things that we would have typically considered to be wasteful, that is, things we're not using right now, like in the US, our cars we use 8% of the time, so 92% of the time they're sitting around. Many things that are, you'll hear later, sitting around in our homes that have real value are actually, when they're not being used, or wasted. And the more that we can identify these, it's what I refer to as the blue dye effect, our ability to actually create a kind of visibility of seeing what's available in your neighbor's in your neighbor's yard, not really, but they want it available. So they're basically putting up and letting you know that they have the ladder that you might need, or they have the Apple press, or in this case, in many cases, you'll hear about cars and things like that. Expensive things that essentially cost a lot and are used infrequently fall into this category. So identifying excess capacity is a lot of what you've been hearing about so far with respect to the sharing economy. Another kind of waste is basically the business of the things that we throw away, so things that would, quote, get recycled or would otherwise be trash. In the UK, they call things meanwhile use, referring to that something is kind of not being used at the moment. So meanwhile, while you're not using it for this, let's use it for that. And they've actually started to create policy and tax incentive that drive meanwhile use. One of the companies that does that is this 3Space. Some of you may be familiar with Lyft. Have you heard of Lyft or Sidecar? This is basically individuals who have cars giving other people rides organized through a marketplace and a mobile app. Private homes, one of the biggest areas where the press certainly has paid a lot of attention, and probably with good reason when you start to see some of these numbers. Private home marketplaces, the ability to bring our personal assets forward into a shared marketplace and make efficient the exchanging and trading of those assets is really what's enabled by technology and happening right now that's gotten so much enthusiasm. So one of the biggest marketplaces is Airbnb. Just to give you the numbers that are about a month old, 500,000 basically listings. So for example, to give you some idea, Airbnb is less than 6 years old. The Hilton is about 92 years old. The Hilton has about 625,000 rooms. The Intercontinental is the largest hotel chain. They have about 650,000 rooms. They own their inventory, Airbnb doesn't. The models are very different, but it scales in an incredible way. So cities are platforms for sharing. We can talk about that in our conversation. I'm sure you'll hear that theme coming up with Yerdle. Many of you may be familiar with open data and how data is essentially the gateway drug to sharing, that as people start to share data and make available the data so that you can see, in fact, what exists and what are assets, there's all sorts of marketplaces that emerge. I'm sure many of you are familiar with applications like Waze, or how many people in the room have used Google in the last 2 minutes, or let's say 2 days. So basically these business models are built on the idea that the more people that use them with the more frequency, the better the model becomes, the better the product rather becomes, because the product is built on taking all the generosity of us that use it and using that data to make the product better and better. So Waze actually tells you when there's a traffic jam, because somebody, Adam, told me on my way over here that was the case. Resilience is a main theme that also I hope we'll talk about a little bit, that as we see Fukushima and Sandy and earthquakes and other things, it brings communities together in important ways. I think increasingly we're discovering, and probably many of us knew, that coming together as a community is rather important anyway, and people generally derive a lot of happiness from being connected to others. So in many ways, technology connects us, but humanity unites us. I think a lot of what happens in the sharing economy comes from a culture of generosity, but I'm also twisted and biased towards that, as well as from an entrepreneurial perspective. I would also say that there is a culture of generosity. There's a tendency to want to share and support other entrepreneurs, and so there's a lot of that that's playing out as well right now in the space. Yerdle is, as you heard, it's a company whose mission is focused around the retail business and looking at how do we kind of create redistribution and make it as sexy as consumption. And I don't want to steal their thunder, but that was enough. So we're learning a new dance together. There's a lot that's happening here, not only between us as entrepreneurs, but also with cities, local governments and communities, and with the different companies who form a kind of ecosystem as we bring these new ideas to market. So as a sort of springboard for where to go, for me, this is a big theme because we're basically saying, let's make little mistakes early and learn really fast. Let's share the mistakes. One of the best examples is this. Bike sharing is the fastest form of bike sharing is the fastest form of personal transportation on the planet today. Organized bike sharing services and systems exist in more than 500 cities. Vélib', which launched in 2005 in Lyon, was basically tested and refined, launched in Paris. They've refined this system so many times. It was done in the open environment, and many of the cities that followed on have learned so much about what not to do, and therefore also what to do. So nobody has had to repeat version 1.0. We've all stood on the sort of generosity and openness of France, and particularly Paris and Lyon. So to that end, we're learning a lot from each other, and I would invite you guys to start to blow things up, do a few experiments, learn early, make a bunch of mistakes, and this is the worst picture of scrambled eggs that I could find. So I think where we're heading is this idea of, the idea is basically we're moving from being together and scrambled, but it's scrambled on a preferential basis. So, how we bring our things together, with whom and what and when, the devil's in the details, but I really think that that's where we're going. So it's instead of DIY, maybe DIT, do it together. So with that, I would like to invite up my Andy Ruben, who is a co-founder of Yurtle and came from, we're so huggy. No, he's sick, we're not hugging him. Senior Vice President of Walmart for sustainability for many years, deep chops in retail, combined with the comedy presence of Adam Werbach, who was the youngest president of the Sierra Club, and then became the CEO of Saatchi and Saatchi S. Both of these guys came together, and we'll find out why in a few minutes, but they came together to make mischief around this idea of looking at how to reduce consumption and at the same time make sharing as sexy perhaps as purchasing. So guys, why did you think this was a great idea?
Thank you. And that was a great introduction. I feel like I need to carry on the egg theme somehow with my own.
Please don't. I mean, you just see that photo?
Yeah. Can I back that question up and just start with a little bit of introduction and then get to the moment of jump off? Will that?
Yeah. So, it's your show.
With Walmart. So when I joined Walmart, I ran global strategy, which is really about how a traditional retailer, a top-down retailer, gets to be bigger, gets into every nook and cranny, right, and continues that model. And at some point along the way, Walmart started having the conversation around sustainability, which I was fortunate enough, given timing, to have the privilege of starting and being very early, and then the first heads of sustainability at Walmart, which is where I met Adam, and really had, in that 3 years, the beginning of sustainability at Walmart, the realization of how much stuff we move on a global sense, right? How this train, as Lisa talked about, keeps speeding up. And when you talk about waste, right, that unused value is actually equal to waste, the view in Walmart and sustainability was that there was a lot of that waste, and we had all kinds of leaps forward on products. And I realized that products were the big thing, and then moved into private brands. And just as a quick example, one of the items, we started looking at all of the items and how we could eliminate waste. We actually removed from the handle of a plastic fork, we removed the resin, just the center of the fork. It was 11% less resin used in every fork Walmart sells. And I felt really excited about that, right? I'm like, wow, this is actually happening. Innovation, we can change every product we sell. And then everybody else will. Until, at some point you have the realization that 1,000 times as many forks sold, even if they're 50% less plastic, is still a lot more plastic. And it became pretty obvious, even in a role like sustainability for Walmart, that just wasn't going to add up. With the population growth that we just talked about, with the issues that we're facing, we can't just make products less bad. And at the same time that we're looking at the trends, Lisa, that you talked about, there's a need for new models that aren't created from inside the existing industrial model, models that are created outside that model and change the way we shop, change the way we get things. And so that was the moment for me, looking at plastic forks and 100 of others, examples from inside big retail, that I got excited about the idea of the sharing economy and collaborative consumption. And then it wasn't far after that we started Yurtle based on that model.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. I was trying to have you also give a little background for Adam so he can save his voice, but maybe you've stored your energy up.
I can talk.
No. Yeah, you can pull a little thing over my head and make me speak.
I guess with the background that Andy gave, I'll just play it out. It would be really good to hear, I guess, a short version of what you thought you were doing at Saatchi and Saatchi S, and why you left to come do this.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm sure, like everyone in this room, in some sense, in believing that you look at the data, you see what's happening, and it's hard not to conclude that we're kind of
the technical.
Yeah. I mean, I've got little kids. I love nothing more than getting out and enjoying the Sierra and living amongst this beautiful place. But I don't know about you, but this, like, the Philippines, Tacloban right now it's just weighing really heavy on me. And the type of data that we're seeing, the response of what the planetary ecosystem is doing in response to the trespass of humanity it's just obvious that something needs to change radically. And I guess I don't know, that's I guess what activism is, and for me that was at the Sierra Club or Greenpeace, and in the work I did, I started working on with you, and I mean we started working together in 2005 when Andy had this kind of crazy proposition that the biggest, baddest, ugliest you didn't say that, I would say that company in the world could actually become the biggest force for good in terms of sustainability. And that was such a ridiculous concept that you could actually take the world's biggest buyer of grapes and Twinkies and junk and socks that don't pull up and
fall down though.
And fall down, yeah. You pull up once and then fall down every time thereafter. Like, turn that into something good. I can't tell if I'm tripping now, so just like.
I gave him a homeopathic thing, and now he's off and like.
But from that point, you
pull it in, Adam.
I'm reeling it in. It became really clear to me. I mean, from the point early on that from activism at the Sierra Club to working at a Walmart to going to a Saatchi where we're trying to just get more and more companies to do it, that it just, like Andy said, it just wasn't adding up. And
so why did you think Yurtle was, what's the Yurtle proposition that made you think that there was going to be a dent made this way versus trying to convert?
I think this is what all of us who believe that what we're onto with the sharing economy is that this is something that's all good, not just a little less bad, but all good. And I want to spend the rest of my days working on something that's all good. If if I can find one way to not have someone to buy another kid's bike that they'll only use for 4 months before the kid grows out of it or didn't even want to use it in the first place, then great. You didn't need to rip that bauxite out from Australia, ship it across in a ship to somewhere to get processed using coal and coke to make it happen, shipped into a factory in Guangzhou, turned into a bike, shipped back in a container ship to the port of Long Beach, gone to Walmart, and then sent back to me.
You got them all worked up now.
So if I can do one thing like that, that feels to me right. And it's just, why not? I mean, this is the place where...
So I mean, because my way of saying it was to also just look at, I think that there's a lot of really successful entrepreneurs. Like, I considered myself to be a successful entrepreneur and a failed environmentalist. And for me, the sharing economy is the opportunity to actually think about environmentalism 3.0 as in terms of actually how do we bring a sensible strategy connected into a capitalist model, because telling people to use less doesn't work. But let's go back to, because for those of, does anybody played with Yurtle or have any sense, just so I know, I'm assuming that nobody, okay, so for the rest of us, can you explain what Yurtle does in a couple sentences?
Please you. I'm going to just wander all over the place.
Andy.
So Yurtle, Yurtle taps into all the things that we have in our closets and garages, the unused inventory, and allows us to get the things we need from that inventory. So think of Yurtle as a giant free store, right? Where instead of the warehouses being 450 miles away that shipped in trucks, right, to San Francisco, the warehouses are collected closets in garages and rooms on campus, right, in apartments. And so that warehouse, when you think about that, for Yurtle dwarfs anything that I've experienced with Walmart or Amazon or anything else globally. So Yurtle is there's a product, there's an iPhone app, and basically you come in, you join. We've got a system that basically works in credits, so everybody who joins, for those of you who have not joined, it's in the Apple Store. You get 250 credits to join, and then there are hundreds of free items. You find something you want, and to get more credits, you post things that you have. So Yurtle essentially allows you to take things that you're done with and turn it into the things that you are looking for no money, for free. And my bet is not only is this one of the biggest things to happen to, right, as a success in terms of, or a potential for change in terms of the environment and society, it is also going to be one of the most powerful retail models for the 21st century.
Can you talk a little bit about, just quickly, how some partnered, like big brands, product brands, might perceive working with Yurtle, and how that might go over on both sides of the transaction? So,
sure. So one of the question in terms of brands and partnerships, obviously this is a change, right? When we think about the change to retail, so it's not going to be for every retailer and every brand. But there are brands that are, many brands, a surprising number of brands that are engaging this and trying to figure out how to not just survive in this future with the sharing economy, but to win in that future. One of them is Patagonia. Yurtle is extremely excited to partner with Patagonia for Black Friday, which is about a week and a half away. And what Patagonia is doubling down on is on Black Friday, when most people are waiting in line to save $25 or $50 on a television, Patagonia is having a party at their Fisherman's Wharf store with a locally brewed beer, with a local band, and they're encouraging, when you bring an item back, we've got hundreds of Patagonia items that have been returned. We'll exchange it for something you're looking for. Right, so their question is, this Black Friday, try sharing. And so, there are brands that are leading this, and what a Patagonia gets out of this is, the continued value that when you buy a Patagonia item, they stand behind that item, no matter how many users it has. Right? They just stand behind it. And so they're moving into a future where there can be fewer kids' jackets and more of them will be Patagonia. And that's a future we like.
And what's been the reception so far from Yurtle of people that have, because you've been playing around with this idea in vivo in San Francisco and related areas for a while?
It's changing. When I left Walmart to do this, I spoke to obviously the Walmart executives about what I was doing. I don't think there was great. I would say there was not understanding of what this would look like, or had I lost my mind to go do this. I think that has changed dramatically in a year and a half. So a year and a half later, when I talk to the same executives, there still is a question: how significant will this change be? But there's no longer a question: is Airbnb real? Right. So if you go back, and as Lisa pointed out, if you were standing in the Hilton, Hyatt, or Marriott boardroom 4 years ago and said the biggest threat is Airbnb, they would have laughed you out of the boardroom. And today, that's just not the case. More people stay in Airbnb tonight than any other hotel.
Well, I mean, you could see one other example it's a really conspicuous is the auto industry. So every major auto manufacturer has either, and they're not mutually exclusive, some have done all of these, but they've either invested in a sharing economy company, they've launched a car sharing service, they've partnered or they've purchased, acquired a sharing service. They've all repositioned themselves out of the auto industry into mobility. And they are just, to give you an example, 3 weeks ago in Germany, in Stuttgart, Daimler had their European car show. It's an international car show in Europe. And normally they have, sexy babes and a big stage and flashy lights and lots of beers and these really hot cars that they bring out and make it look, the most wow possible. This year what happened was the CEO of Daimler walked out, and across the entire stage they had little spotlights on 16 car-to-go cars, little smart cars, all lined up to basically make the big thing that they're doing sharing. And that freaked people out. It basically turned people, the press and the auto industry was kind of like, uh-oh. So we're seeing a lot of incumbent businesses and brands really start to now get tweaked. We've hit an inflection point where, and you can tell when you start to piss off existing brands, or when the lobbyists come after you, or there's a lot of policy and legal issues at the level of cities, which we're seeing all now happen, is that it went from, isn't this cute, these kids are trying to share, to, holy crap, this could really be significant, and we're starting to get annoyed. And so that hasn't really happened yet in retail, right? And you guys are still pretty early. Do you think you're too early?
No.
No, it feels, I have to say, so we've been at this. We launched our first, what we called Yurtle 1.0 on the web a year ago. Basically a year ago Black Friday, so this will be our 1 year anniversary. And what we're seeing, and we just basically 7 weeks ago launched what we call Yurtle 2.0, which is an iPhone-based app, and we're building the web component of it now. And we're seeing the numbers way up in terms of participation. We're seeing a 300% increase in the number of people who are coming on, liking items, wanting items, and getting items. We're seeing a direct line to people who like items, want items, get items, to what they actually go and post. So we're seeing a really clear movement towards reciprocity, in the sense that if you want something, you get something, you'll very quickly see that person turn around and post a lot of things back to the community. And it's not surprising, right? This is how our lives work, and humans are actually wired for this type of behavior. But to your point, we haven't seen this type of interaction in retail, in former retail. But when you look at the facts, it's just kind of obvious, right? So self-storage has gone up by 1,000% in the United States in the last 30 years. 1,000%. Near where I live, in San Francisco, Potrero Hill, there's a Wonder Bread factory, right, that went out of business. Wonder Bread, not doing so great, although I think back a little bit. And that's now a U-Haul self-storage place. There are 300 jobs there, and now it exists to store stuff for people. That's not economically productive. That's a waste of natural resources, and it's a job.
Someone bring the sedatives.
I get worked up. So we see that we see a lot more stuff. The point is that we actually have this overabundance of stuff, and I think, Paul, you're shaking your head, and I know, Renee, you agree with this. It's not just that we have the stuff, but we're actually paying the cost of the stuff. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, hoarding, this year is now part of the DSM, the American Psychiatric Association's list of diagnostic mental disorders for the first time.
But it's also profitable.
Well, it's funny, but it's profitable. It's companies like Walmart and many others are feeding into it because it's that place. And I mean, I don't mean to pick on Walmart per se, but
go ahead.
But the truth is that this is actually a serious condition facing Americans, and not just in America.
I don't think it's just. I mean, it's not just Americans. I mean, just to sort of switch gears a little bit. As a friend of the company and an investor, I have to wonder also. I looked at what you guys have been buying lately, and I noticed that you have an ice cream truck. And I was wondering if you're starting to hoard those or you had a strategy. Do you have an explanation?
I like ice cream trucks.
This is how it starts.
Yes. Yeah.
Andy?
This is actually how this one started. Adam found an ice cream truck that he just loved, and a number of, this is exactly how this happened. And I feel like I was supposed to be the adult in charge that was supposed to say why we as a company, as a startup, should not buy the ice cream truck. And I kind of fell in love with the ice cream truck too. It's, in all seriousness, the ice cream truck is an experiment to bring Yertle to people. So the ice cream truck is physical, obviously, and like Lisa said, we're learning. So the ice cream truck will be in the Mission. It'll be by Atlas Cafe with set hours, 3 days a week. It'll be in Dolores Park on the weekends, and you can follow it like a food truck, right? And so we're continue to experiment with how do we make it not only free but fast and easy to get the things that you need from these unused, valuable assets that are sitting around. And the ice cream truck is one more step in that.
So simply as it works, and imagine this on Telegraph too, but you can come and bring and drop off your stuff for things you want to share in the neighborhood, and all those things will be cataloged and sent in an email that will go out 9 in the morning the next morning. Anything you want, you click and say, I want it, and you can pick it up at the ice cream truck at the end of the day. And the idea is that we want to be not just better than Amazon, we want to be faster and freer, so that you can actually get whatever you need just right down the block, and maybe some ice cream too. And Andy sometimes jokes that we're not just making a rainbow maker here, or like a unicorn mint at Yertle. But the truth is that this stuff should be fun and good and delightful. It shouldn't, it's like, it shouldn't be so. People get hangovers from shopping.
Yeah,
and it should be like, oh, I got what I needed, and I met someone, and I got some ice cream.
Well, it's funny. I would say, what did you say?
I said, you get ice cream. Everyone likes ice cream.
What I think is a lot of the...
You like ice cream.
Yeah, don't go there. I had like a gelato, a six-step program when I got back from Italy. Yeah.
Gelato. Do they have gelato trucks?
No.
Oh, God.
You have to go to your gelato. But there's this whole phenomenon with Yertle, which is new for me. Have you guys kind of, that was one of the original ideas, was like, new for me is as cool as new. Like if in my case, I got like this smoker that somebody was moving and they didn't want. We use it all the time. I never even knew I wanted a smoker. I would never have bought a smoker. It's super useful. We've probably given away, I don't know, several $1,000s worth of stuff that is really great for someone else but was sitting around. So there's this whole sort of, circular aspect to it. But the goodness, like the gift aspect of somebody getting something for nothing, but that whole sort of idea that it's almost as good or better in many cases than if you bought it. Do you have any?
There's something has anyone got anything free as a gift or on Yertle? If you raise your hand. A few people here. There's something so incredibly cool when someone puts something out there and gives it to you. I got a turntable recently, and I could have definitely bought a turntable on Amazon. I probably would have gotten a black one. This one happened to be silver, Tectonics turntable. And it sits right by the door when I walk out, and every time I walk out, the turntable feels more special than anything that I would have bought. I see, where was Minnie? I saw, so Minnie had IKEA curtains that posted on Yertle, which this is, I now have those curtains that you were done with. They are in a garage turned into a guest room. There's something more special about items when they come from people. There's something more connected about this model. And I would liken it to when you get in a Lyft or when you get in an Uber X and you get out. I mean, yes, you got from point A to point B. And maybe you paid the same, maybe you paid less. But there's something different that you feel like there's something more connected. You just had a quick conversation with someone who's driving their own car. You got in their car and you got out of their car. I think it's like staying at an Airbnb. There's something more connected in the model that really is beautiful about peer-to-peer.
Well,
so let me just sort of ask you guys, because a lot of this sounds very sort of Berkeley compliant.
That's right, we're in Berkeley.
Right? But like if we're outside the distortion field, like say in the Midwest, like is this kind of gifting friends make me feel good, or is this a marketplace at some moment, and how do you see getting there?
So if you all have heard of, like in retail, I'm going to go back to retail for a minute. Showrooming is the concept where you're standing in Best Buy and you're on your phone looking at the price on Amazon, right? So showrooming is when you go into Best Buy, but you're really buying from Amazon. We have just seen the beginning of that, right? To think with the information that we have access today with our mobile phones that we will stop at what else you can buy for $2 less when there is a free record player somewhere else. This is an incredibly competitive retail space that will play way outside the distortion field, where what's happening right now is, I mean, so you might go on Yodel and find, you know, something you're looking for, curtains, a turntable, a gift for this holiday. Those are things that you are not buying, right? You found something that you got on Yodel, and that's something that you are not buying. And so we are just we're just seeing the beginning of taking a, you know, retail is, one more comment about it. Retail is about helping people meet their needs, right? It's not about selling stuff. Amazon starts every new initiative that they take on with just a simple Word document about, tell me the story from a customer point of view. Tell me how the customer is better off based on what we are going to do. And in every scenario where a customer goes into Best Buy to get a PS3, the customer is best off if they can find the thing locally forward deployed in a garage that's half a block away. It makes more sense from a customer point of view, and this will be how a large portion of retailing will be done, which exists way outside the distortion field.
So I want to take some questions, if you guys are keen to have chats. Before we do that, I just wanted to ask both of you, not to say now, but I'm just letting you know that I'm going to ask you at the end if what you need, including what you might ask these people for in terms of engagement, feedback, whatever. Okay. Okay. The question was, in the unlikely event that making money is important, how would you make it?
Me?
Yeah, you.
So there are lots of delectable ways to make money in product marketplaces. Fortunately, we're not rushing into that. And we have very patient and wonderful investors who are interested in building something with long-term value that doesn't kind of pick the fruit too early, if that makes sense. We want to build a real community that makes sense, and we want to build a business model around it that supports the growth of that community. So the things that we're seeing right now that are interesting possibilities are, one, partnerships with long-term product manufacturers, durable product manufacturers like Patagonia, where they can understand that they can get a premium for building a better product and find ways to make money later on if that product gets used many, many, many times thereafter. So that's one way of doing it. Another is through kind of services around the product itself. So that could be shipping and delivery, it could be repair, it could be keeping things going and refreshing or renewing it as it goes. But there's a lot of labor and work and economic benefit in keeping something going as opposed to making something new. So we want to be involved in that process as we go through. So those are two. There's lots of others that make us feel very confident that it's there. The challenge right now is just to grow it and prove to everyone else that it's as clear as we see it.
Embedded in your question, though, was, and this could be just a yes or no answer from you guys, is do you consider making money part of what is the mission of the business? or the goal at some moment, I won't say the mission, but is making money, it's yes or no. Are you going to make money?
Yes, we will make money,
Good.
but it's absolutely not our purpose.
Right.
So I want to be really clear because we actually do have a purpose, and we're fortunately set as a California for benefit corporation, following actually in Patagonia's lead, was the first company in California to set that up, which means that our purpose is to reduce the number of new things that everyone has to buy by 25%. And in the process, we will indeed make a good profit for the company.
Yes. The question is that a lot of the discussion has to do with the local benefits of having the product that you're looking for, close by a neighbor or something like that. And so what's the relationship between delivering on that value and having sufficient density in order to create a marketplace?
So density is definitely important, but there are a lot of things that we can do and technology helps with, right, to connect people who have something and people who want something. A record player or turntable tends to be something more local. We also got a piano on Yodel. That's a local item. There are items, though, that can be shipped. I just got a Wii game for my kids that came from New York. And it's, at this point, with the web as it is and with technology, it's 2 clicks. So I found that game. It happened to be in New York. It's really easy and fairly low impact and low cost to send an envelope. Now, as density builds, ideally you'd be able to find things that are even more local. But for the time being, it's really a mix of local and broader.
Second question, who pays for the shipping?
Yeah, so in the way the model works right now is if you had the Wii game and I found it, I would pay the $2, $4, or $5, $2 in this case for the shipping. So the person sent me 3 Wii games, I paid $2. Right, and my kids are pretty ecstatic.
Another question? The question is, rather than wait until everyone has a stuff hangover and then has so much to yodel, would it make sense, and sort of from a carbon perspective, it certainly makes sense to try to bring kind of a yodel ontology and phenomenon to developing markets before they manage to collect all this nonsense?
It's it's just better retail, right? So it'll be a little bit like a developing market not needing to put down landlines before mobile is a just smarter way to go. So the idea that somebody would have to retrace the steps of what we've done in the US shouldn't need to happen, not because anyone's forced to, but because there's just a better model to get things that saves money and resources. Right, so my sense is that just like in other places where new technologies exist, new models exist, other markets, as they evolve, will pick up on the best possible models, and they will skip a lot of the things that we... And by the way, this place that we're in has it's been 60 years, right? It has not been hundreds of years, not thousands of years. We have come into this place of being where we have the amount of stuff we have in the last 50 to 60 years.
I would just say, that with respect to your question as well, it's a hard sell from the standpoint of being conspicuous consumption into another country that's attempting to acquire stuff. And there's all sorts of, lots of different research and different models that have attempted to do that. I think that one of the things that's happening with the sharing economy is, first of all, it's a global thing. So people who are native to a particular culture or country or city are much better at coming up with the great ideas for making access be more compelling and less costly and more sexy than ownership, right? And so we're starting to see that actually happen, rather than, kind of the gringos coming with whatever, telling everybody else not to do something. It's a very hard sale, unless the world has changed dramatically in the last 6 months. It's just a really hard pill to swallow. So it's a great idea. I don't know. I know that you guys aren't planning on leaving the country anytime soon. So. But it's a great question.
Sorry, you asked a question about skills and services too. Mm-hmm. So right now, it's not what we're set up for, because there's such a gap in the goods place, and there's actually some really great services from Skillshare to TaskRabbit and other places that are good exchanges. Trade School. There's lots of really good ones that are, and there's a lot of innovation and great space that way. We're seeing some hacking of our system on that, which is cool, but mostly we're trying to focus on this.
Well, also, before I forget, there's a directory at my site that's free that you could play around there, and there's like 8,500 or something different listings in places all over the world, so you can get a sense of, skill shares and those sorts of things. Yes? The question was that he couldn't help but notice that Yurtle has a lot of the same similar features and intent as at least a portion of Craigslist. And so, how would these gentlemen differentiate Yurtle from something like Craigslist?
I love Craigslist. It's awesome. I also love FreeCycle. These are all amazing things, and we need more of them. The truth is that there needs to be, just like there's not one store, there are lots of different ones. There needs to be many different types of ways to get things out of our closets and being used. And despite the success of those sorts of sites, we still have more and more things in our closets and garages. It's growing and growing and growing. So it's not successful enough at doing that. So
the market is way from saturation right now.
Yeah, it's heading the wrong. Supply is growing faster than the ability to serve that supply up right now.
I would also say that one of the things that we're seeing is Craigslist, eBay, and Roomorama, Airbnb, a lot of these things were happening as edge cases on Craigslist. And that what you're seeing in the sharing economy, as we saw with Web 2.0 and a lot of other things, is people will take a slice of something that's happening on a general purpose platform and create a very, extremely efficient, very specialized product or offering. And I think that Yurtle is making efficient a certain class of engagement that happens on Craigslist. Craigslist is sort of what I refer to as a tofu platform. It takes on the taste of whatever's around it. So I think that Yurtle is much more specialized.
Well, there's no need. We don't need to consume much of the things that we use. We should use them and reuse them again and repair them and pass them on. That's one of our advisors is Bill McDonough, and he just finds the whole word consumption to be wrong for what we're heading out to.
Yeah, I hate it.
Lisa does too, yeah. If I can, Lisa raised the question about this challenge of needing the next new thing, and you mentioned that too. And just to take a second on that, humans are prone towards neophilia. This idea of constantly searching for the next new thing. And in some ways that's pretty great because it makes us innovative and interested and thrill seeking and novelty seeking and all sorts of things that we see in adolescence. In some ways it's not so good. It makes people, find different partners at times. That's not wonderful. Or go and consume the next thing, And that's a challenge that we actually have to address underneath what we're doing. So and this probably goes back to your question about how this is different than Craigslist or other places, we actually really want to kind of rebrand those items that have been experienced, those items that are vintage, those items that have stories attached to them. So for that Patagonia jacket that's used, right, you want to see it as actually filled with story and adventure. And you want that jacket because of its juju. You want that jacket because of the mountains it's climbed. And the last thing you want for that jacket, that wonderful, heroic jacket, is to sit in a closet sadly waiting for its next adventure. You are there to rescue that jacket, to get it back on the mountain. And
see why Saatchi didn't want to let him go.
No, and we should be ranking that jacket not by its carbon footprint, but its experiences per jacket. Right? That's what we need to do. Joy per jacket is what we should be checking. And it has having no joy when it's in the closet right then. And our job is to get it out and get it on the trail and make sure that someone's constantly doing that. And that's the hard work that we have to actually do. And it's not just us, of course, and that's why there's wonderful companies like Patagonia, other ones we've mentioned. That's the story of stuff that we actually have to start talking about, not the story that is very negative that we can all go into too.
The one thing that I'll just mention with respect to your question is, which is a long conversation and a whole other evening, is just that I think the idea of disposability in products and not, Bill McDonough, our friend, who's wrote Cradle to Cradle, also often says when somebody says, oh, I'm just going to throw this away, and he'll pull up a map of the world and say, so where is away? I think the whole idea of what we're coming off of is this subsidizing waste, and that the true cost of waste is part of what's coming forward. So we're going to start to see products that are organized around better things, meaning design better, upgradable materials can be recovered cradle to cradle wise, and things that are designed designed to be shared, so that things that have the sharing capability actually have more value than their comparable standalone model. And that will be homes and bicycles and cars, and we're starting to see all of that already. So I think the emphasis is changing, but not fast enough apparently for most of us in the room. Yes, sir. The question is, just how many hours do you think it will be until Yertle is considered severe competition and discussed in the Walmart boardroom?
Yeah, I mean, obviously don't know. No, I mean, it's impossible to know that. But it's not just us. I mean, there are many working endlessly toward that. I mean, our goal is not to have something that Lisa would call cute. Our goal is that millions of items, as we were just talking about, are coming in and out of our lives. And what that means is that a retailer whose entire model is based on selling 6% more every year will need a new model. That's our goal. And so whether that's 3 years or 5 years, I believe that Airbnb surprised everyone there. I think that the car services did the same thing, and I think that everyday things will be no different. These are underutilized assets with value.
A great mentor and friend of Berkeley, and alumnus from here, was David Brower, who was the first executive director of the Sierra Club, and he was the one who the IRS went after in the fight to protect the Grand Canyon when Nixon was trying to build a dam on the Grand Canyon. Brower fought it, the IRS went after him, and ever since that time we have 501c3s, foundations set up. And to his dying day, he believed that the IRS should be the target of progressives who are trying to change the way that we go buy things. That they should come after us, and we should go after them. Because right now, when you look at GDP, it doesn't include transactions that happen on Craigslist. We don't count those. Crazy. Right? The fact that this jacket got more use, or that laptop that's sitting in my closet that a young girl could be learning how to type on, and could be, these are important values that we're not valuing right now. So the government is in the way of us right now, and we'll push them out of the way because this makes a lot of sense and it's value. So.
Okay, so.
Well, that is a fantastic place to start. I think we could do an entire evening of Q&A. So I want to thank Lisa, Andy, and Adam for being our panelists. It was a fascinating.
And you got to say bye.
Hopefully we can encourage them to stick around for a couple more minutes after the presentation, and
he'll only stick around if he can curse some more.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
I would like that. I also wanted to thank our Center for Responsible Business for co-sponsoring this with the Lester Center. And the staff behind the scenes and the students who help out with this as well. And finally, I wanted to thank our organizations out front. So City Car Share, Collaborative Housing, Credibles, East Bay Co-Housing, ManyShip, and Scoot Network. So thank them for showing up. And come to our next forum on March 4th with a representative from Google Ventures. Thank you very much.
I got your book free about 5 years ago.